I really enjoy using clothes to kill people.
On this episode of Rider Jiu-Jitsu TV, we have Professor Eric Freed right after this. Professor Freed, thank you so much for coming on Rider Jiu-Jitsu TV. I really appreciate it, and I'm super excited to hear from you today.
It is my pleasure.
All right, so tell us about your jiu-jitsu journey, where it started and how you ended up where you are today.
Sure. I feel like I sort of spent my entire life searching for the right martial art. I talked my parents into putting me in judo for 5 minutes when I was 8 or so. And they yanked me very quickly when I started flipping my much younger brother in the backyard. And like I grew up in, the Karate Kid generation. So it was all like, 80s movie glorified, the skinny weak kid can overcome obstacles and fight back against his bullies, and I was the tiny kid. You wouldn't necessarily know it to look at me now, but I was I was small for my age and I was young for my grade, so I got picked on plenty, and I had this sort of dream of being able to hold my own. So I really didn't get into much else until I was in college. My dad bought me like a little rinky-dink weight set when I was 10. So I was working out a little bit, but I was still small, and got into college, got into a little bit of, did some Tai Chi, which has, stayed with me since then, right? I use a lot of the principles from that. I did a little bit of ninjutsu with a buddy, and my college fraternity would occasionally just have little wrestling matches in the foyer of the house. we would grapple, and that none of us really had a clue what we were doing, and my ninjutsu buddy and I would get on the floor in the gym, and I'd be like, okay, so next time we do this, I want to kind of be able to kick some ass. So we would kind of play around with stuff, and we didn't even know jiu-jitsu existed at the time. As I graduated college and I was married, and we were starting to, think about kids and whatever. And I was starting to look at getting a big boy job. And, so I was like, okay, well, I'm an adult now. I can go find something that I really want to do. And so I found Kung Fu, and I went to, I joined Shaolin Do for about 3 years, and which is what it takes to get a black belt over there. And, and I enjoyed it, and it was cool, but it was not really it wasn't really speaking to me. I kind of, I tested for my black belt and ran a marathon within 2 weekends of each other, and burned out a little bit, took a break. And, it took me a while to get back to Kung Fu, and I kind of went back and started trying to refresh my skills. I was doing some other, athletic pursuits at the time. And so I went back and I started kind of refreshing the material and started teaching kids classes. And eventually kind of got to a point where I was like, I wasn't doing it for me. Something was missing. And so I just started, sideline. My kids were in the classes. So I started, sitting on the sidelines and watching the kids' classes. And that's when I met Alex Henley. And he and I were, both had kids in the classes. I had been teaching his kids and mine and whatever. And but now we're on the sidelines, and we, struck up conversations, and we kind of got to know each other and became buds. And we started going to sports bars and watching UFC fights. And, every now and then, one or the other of us would bring it up. Hey, we should try this jiu-jitsu thing. And, I remember pretty clearly we went to a sports bar, watched Brock Lesnar choke Shane Carwin with an arm triangle. And he turned to me and goes, let's do jiu-jitsu. And I had been thinking about it since the last time we had talked. And I was like, yes, let's do this now. And so we went over to, Mario was teaching out of the CTC over there on Mopac. At the time we went in, we were very impressed by his resume, because we didn't know what third degree black belt meant. We didn't know what 3-time world champ meant, but it all sounded very impressive. And, at this time, he and I, we were both of our wives had become slightly, acquainted with each other, and they would make fun of us for being boyfriends and whatever. Well, we walked into we were going to go to a gi class, and we walked in while the no gi class was going on, and we saw these, sweaty men in tight fitting clothing, with their legs wrapped around each other. And we kind of looked at each other we think they make fun of us now. This is going to be off the chain. Well, the rest is history, right? We both joined at the same time. We trained, mat minute for mat minute together, and couldn't get enough of it. Like when we were not in class, we would like go over to one of the other's houses, and like our wives would go out shopping, and we would like get on the carpet in the living room floor and just grapple. And they would come home and throw the door open, and there we would be in our sweaty embrace, and they would like point and laugh, and it was but we were enjoying the hell out of it. Like we really, this was the thing, right? This was what spoke to me finally after all these years, and I'm in my mid 30s at that point. So anyway, so he and I just started training together with Mario. A couple of months in, Mario they shut down the CTC. Mario had to move, so we were in a loft above Byron Anderson's garage for a little bit before he found his space, the space that he's still in now. And so we were with him through that bit, and we trained together for years. And like this was it. This was what I had been looking for. And I think the main reason is because all of the other stuff, the Kung Fu is more like dancing than it was like fighting. The striking arts, I mean, clearly, MMA has shown them to be effective, but only because now everybody knows Jiu-Jitsu and people are scared to go to the ground. For a while there, it was the people who knew how to grapple were the ones who were just winning all the time. And, so it was an art that was effective for people. Like I never really considered myself to be especially athletic. Alex didn't really either. He hadn't really done anything athletic that, to speak of. I had done some stuff, but I never felt like I was a natural athlete. I'd run into people who were natural athletes, and I just wasn't. That wasn't me. But this was finally something that I could sink my teeth into and get skilled, right? And where skill could actually overcome physical prowess.
Yep.
And that's what and the intellectual aspect of it that really spoke to me. So
awesome. That
was kind of the beginning of the journey. That was a dozen years ago.
Great. That's awesome. So you said that you did Tai Chi. Has that or maybe Kung Fu crossed over into your Jiu-Jitsu at all? Like, has that helped you? Were you glad you did that?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm kind of, and I don't know if this is like overly optimistic of me, but I'm kind of the person that I feel like everything in my life has prepared me for whatever I'm doing right now.
Sure.
The Kung Fu, it was a good experience. Like I think it certainly fulfilled something in me. I was certainly like when I would go through tough phases in my life, getting out there and, I remember distinctly, walking into the gym and telling a guy, I just got some really upsetting news. Would you hold this kick shield for me? And just beating the snot out of it and just really that release that really, I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? Things happen in your life and you can go and leave it on the mats.
Yeah, for sure.
As far as the art itself, I don't find that the Kung Fu translates all that much. The Tai Chi does, though. Tai Chi, they call it an internal martial art, right? And it's about the way that it applies martially, right? I mean, it looks kind of just like a slow dance, but the way that it applies martially is as using soft against hard, using redirection instead of force, using angles to control, using angles to avoid. It's kind of like, and I'll probably make a dozen Karate Kid references here, but it's kind of like, when the Karate Kid was doing the thing with the swinging spiky pendulum thing, right? And he was using the drum technique, right? It's not because he was swatting the thing out of the way. It's that he was moving, right? Gotcha. He's moving aside and letting it go. And that's a very Tai Chi thing. And so that kind of principle of don't resist this way, but like redirect and that and soft against hard very much translates into jiu-jitsu. And
yes, definitely.
We used to do a thing called push hands. It was like it was like a sparring version of Tai Chi, and you would square off against someone, and your feet were supposed to stay still, and you were not allowed to move quickly, and you were not allowed to use power, and you had to get the other person's feet to move. And so it was very much of a being able to root and center and use that redirection, use that flow to be able to, and really that sensitivity to find the other person's balance and be able to move them off of their base.
That's awesome.
I think that's a huge component of jiu-jitsu. I've even taught that we called it push hands. I've even taught a lesson around that or two over the years in my school.
Cool.
And it's not for everybody, and people, some people think it's a little weird, but it's definitely it definitely has applications.
Oh yeah, like the whole redirect using minimal energy for sure.
Yeah.
So on the long road to black belt, how did BJJ change your life?
Yeah, big time. So there's the humbling aspect of it, right? I mean, by the time I was in my mid 30s, I was in much better shape than I was a bigger guy by that time. I had a growth spurt in my late teens, and and I was working out still. I'd been lifting weights and stuff, so I was a bigger, stronger person now, and I was probably about 210 or so, 215 when I joined Mario's. And just to have like Nelson, for example, I don't know if have you met Nelson?
I think
Nelson.
so.
I outweighed him by 40 or 50 pounds, and he was a brown belt and I was a white belt, and he would just like a kitten with a ball of yarn. It was ridiculous. He would just, completely dominate me without any seeming effort at all. And so that really is a humbling experience. Like, it wasn't that surprising that Mario would dominate me, right? He outweighed me by
Sure.
nearly 2x, right? So,
Yeah.
but that Nelson, this much smaller guy, and other than that, he didn't have any physical attributes over me, especially he was shorter, and he wasn't like especially beefy or anything. Like he would just like completely dominate me. So that really made it click, and that sort of humility um, really kind of it'll put anybody in their place, and people have one of two reactions, because of course over the years I've seen many different reactions to I've seen that person come into the gym, and they're one of two people, right? They get their ass kicked, of course, the first time, right? Nobody comes in and dominates if they don't have any experience.
Yep.
um, and one of two things happens. They're either like, F this, this is stupid, and like they basically rage quit because they can't handle, their ego can't handle it, or they're like, oh my god, this is amazing, I need to learn this, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the second one, was me, like, I have to know more. And so the humility really sort of centered me and made me realize over the course of the rest of my life since then, that like, looks aren't everything, as far as like, somebody's a big muscle head or whatever. Like, it doesn't mean that they can kick ass. If somebody like appears smarter than you, or appears whatever, like there's always something in there, right? There's always some way that you
Yeah.
were that it's not a linear scale, right? It's not like you're better or worse than somebody. It's that there's, in this way they can win, in this way you can win, and it's and
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of, it gives everything perspective. um, but like, I think one of the main things is that as I got uh, physically bigger, and people stopped kind of thinking that they should pick on me and whatever, I still had that weakling little kid inside of me. And jujitsu, as I became more proficient at it, and as I started being able to be the guy who could humble the new guy coming in, uh, I started to gain this internal confidence that I had been searching for my entire life,
Gotcha.
and that bleeds through to every aspect of my life.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
It makes me know myself. It makes me more sure of myself. I know who I am and what I'm capable of, and what I'm not capable of.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes like that combination of confidence and humility really informs the the entire rest of my life.
How did you handle failure when you first started? What kept you coming back?
Uh, yeah, I was never the super competitive, must win at all costs kind of guy. Like, I sound American, but I'm really kind of not. I mostly grew up in Europe, and
Oh.
whether like it's cause or effect, whether it's because of where I grew up or who raised me, like my parents aren't those people either.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why they ended up over in Europe with me, or maybe like I don't, it's like I don't know which way around the equation goes, but like I never grew up with that must win at all costs, that drive to succeed, that like and my and so um, I was never into, and still am not into, competition.
Hmm.
I don't enjoy it. I don't like really anything about it, win or lose. Like, it's
Interesting.
not fun for me. Um, and so I don't know. Ask the question again.
How did you handle failure when you first started? Like, what kept you coming back to the gym?
Yeah. So I mean, certainly from those first, that first month of experience or whatever, where I would come in and just be completely destroyed. And once I kind of twigged and realized, oh, like it's not just because it's not because these people are bigger and stronger than me. It's because they have more experience, they have more knowledge, they have more understanding.
Mm-hmm.
They're not necessarily faster or more flexible or whatever. They are learning a skill, and I can learn that. Like I'm capable of learning that. And in kung fu, it was, I don't know, it was, they were, like I said, it was more like dancing than like fighting. They would teach you forms, and then there would be a sparring component, but like there wasn't such a crystal clear, crisp, um, uh, people with a higher belt were better fighters as there is in jujitsu. Like the exception proves the rule in jujitsu. Like very rarely are you going to find a white belt that can beat up on blue belts, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas in kung fu there was a lot of natural ability or reflexes or power, or I don't know if people had been watching Karate Kid since they were children like me and could like do it. So that kept me going back to kung fu because I thought it was cool, right? And I wanted to be able to do the forms, but I was missing that component of that actually translating to ability. And so in jiu-jitsu, it was so clear that those skills that you learned would improve, like would literally make you better at it, right?
Yep.
And so that's, I didn't really see it as failure. I saw it as, you don't know that yet.
Gotcha.
Go learn that.
It's a
Become better
great.
at that. Drill that.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
it's like you go into, you would go in, my kids, trying to going through some math stuff right now, right? You don't go into math class expecting to know the quadratic formula or even be able to figure it out, because that's for other people. That's for the like the inventors, right? It's something that you have to be taught,
Mm-hmm.
but you can be taught it. And once you are taught it, it makes sense and it clicks, and you can apply that formula to that specific kind of situation, and it works. And
Yeah.
then multiply that by the thousands of techniques and variations of positions and whatever in jujitsu. And like, so it's this body of knowledge that you can attain. And just because you don't know something doesn't mean you're failing at it. It just means you haven't learned it yet.
Yeah, that's great. That's a money tip right there for sure. Have there been any barriers to your success on the road to black belt?
Um, I mean, the usual, like, illness and injury.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen to everybody. I had very, very early on, I got a, this was a good story. I had been in jujitsu long enough to have been told that you do not cross your ankles from back control because there is a foot lock.
Yes.
And so I had this guy, Lance Kimmons, who is, I don't know, a black belt under Shanji, I think now somewhere. Um, he was one of my early training partners, and he was, a few stripes into his white belt when I joined. And he knew some stuff, right? But at some point he had my back, and he had me in a body triangle, which
Mm.
isn't the same thing at all. But I didn't know that at the time, right? So I was like, oh, look, he has his ankles crossed. I shall ankle lock him. Of course, I tried to throw my ankle, on the inside is where you're supposed to get that ankle lock, but I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to get this leg that's all the way out here. And so I like threw my leg around and I couldn't quite reach it. I finally grabbed it like with the edge of my foot or whatever. And then like started pulling. I'm like, oh, why isn't he tapping? I have him in the ankle lock. So I pulled harder and my MCL just went pop.
Oh,
And so like this was, like I said, a couple of months in. And so like, and that took forever to rehab. And
yeah.
so I was like, I was broken for a substantial chunk right early on there. But like, I don't see that. It seems like a barrier, but almost without exception, I've seen injuries for myself, for my students, for people that I've trained with and heard of. And every time there's an injury, when people come back from their injuries, and they always come back sooner than they should, which is
Mm-hmm.
like, not quite as long as the doctor says you should take 12 weeks usually, and really you should probably take 6, and everybody comes back at 4, like that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But when you come back from an injury and you have that physical limitation still, it forces you into different paths of your game. It
Yes.
forces you to change the way you grapple. And without exception, you come out of the other side of that a better grappler. You come out of the other
Yes,
side of that
definitely.
with skills that you just would not have been forced to develop otherwise, or you would not have had the inclination to develop otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So, uh, a barrier, yes, but when you overcome it, it makes you like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So like that's on the injury side, and I've had my share of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a very close relationship with my physical therapist. Like it's
Yeah.
we've known each other for many years, and he's a judo guy too, as it happens. So we have
Gotcha.
plenty to talk about. Um, Illness has been another thing. So I had a pretty serious medical issue right as I was getting my purple belt, I believe it was, and that kept me sidelined for probably 4 months.
Okay.
And but nothing was on my mind that whole time except when am I going to get back to the mats? How am I going to get back to the mats? And so like as
Yeah.
soon as I could, I've been doing yoga for a number of years. And by the way, if you're listening to this and you're looking for something to cross train and you don't want to go like lift weights or do a bunch of running or whatever, yoga is probably the best cross training for jujitsu. So take that aside and take that for what it's worth. So I was doing yoga as I was recovering from this major surgery that I had, and just thinking, just every thought was, how do I get back to the mats? When do I get back to the mats?
Yep.
And finally came back. Most of the people that you hear of get their black belts in you know 12 years, 10 years, that kind of order. um, if you if you don't take breaks, like if you don't take a bunch of time off, like most of those people have taken significant breaks at some point in their jiu-jitsu career. If you don't
Yep.
take time off, 8-ish years like is attainable, is normal, right? If you train a good solid 3 times a week ish for 8 years, you're gonna get your black belt. Um, and so like aside from that hiatus and then the injuries at various times along the way, like I effectively was training 3 times a week for that entire time and got my black belts in 8 years. Um,
Wow.
Alex, my buddy Alex, was didn't have as many breaks, and also there was some gym moving, which also slows down the career a little bit. But I
Yeah.
would consider him far more dedicated than me, but also far more talented. He
Mm.
got his in 7, which I consider to be pretty fast
Oh yeah, definitely.
for somebody starting from zero. If you start with a
Yeah.
grappling background, it can be different. But starting from zero, 7 years is pretty fast. 8 years is like I would say fast side of normal. Um, but so like those are I would say the major barriers. I'm lucky enough that I didn't really have like social barriers is the wrong word. Like my family situation was good.
Yeah.
It was my family and I had a pretty good understanding from early on that like it it seems like you're taking time away from your family, but it's this thing in your life that's absolutely necessary. You have to fill this gap with something. If it's not jujitsu, you have to have something that gets you moving, that gets you
Mm-hmm.
sweating, that gets you and that gives you a release, a mental release from your day-to-day grind.
Yep.
Something that you can escaping from your job and escaping from your family as well, right? You can love your family to death, but still need that time away from them, and when you're on the mats, you're not thinking of anything else. You
Yep.
can't, right? There's not that opportunity, and that release, that break is you got to get it from somewhere. And I was lucky enough that my family understood that, and like because they can see if I'm off the mats for a little while, I start to get grouchy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and
That's
they're
my wife says the same thing.
yeah, like you're getting grumpy. Go train, please get
Uh-huh.
out and go train. Um, and it doesn't cost, or it didn't cost that much financially to do it, and so I never really had that limitation, and I have trouble paying for gym dues or whatever. So like those barriers were not a thing for me as they might be for some people.
Yeah.
I would say that the first one, the sort of family slash social slash having I don't have time aspect of it, like that's a psychological barrier. That's not a real barrier. You have to carve out the time for it. You
You have to
have
make time.
to for something like that, right? Anyway, so The short answer to your question is like, not really. There haven't really been any barriers that I've felt were insurmountable, where I felt that it was, oh no, I'm not going to be able to do this anymore.
Gotcha.
The reason that I'm where I am is because the house that I lived in Austin flooded a couple times.
Oh, okay.
The first time we rented another house and kind of rebuilt everything, and insurance helped, and that was fine. It
Hmm.
was still a horrible, grueling 4 or 5 months, but
Yeah.
then a year and a half later it flooded again. We're like, we're out. That's it. We're done.
No more.
Yeah, so and we couldn't afford to live in Austin anymore, so we moved to Taylor, and
Gotcha.
I very quickly realized that I was not willing to commute 45 minutes each way to train. So I started a gym, so
Awesome.
that I could build a group of people that I could roll with.
Yeah.
There's a pretty long horizon on that plan, but at this point, I've got some people that give me a good run for my money, and
Hmm.
it's uh, it's been a successful plan.
Yeah, that's great. I loved watching it because, like, I remember. I think I remember when you got. I think you had your purple belt when I started, but I like from then I've seen you kind of grow from there, And when you started Concept, it was awesome, and I remember just being like, man, I want to go train there. And I think Alex and I came and trained a couple of times in the beginning.
In the very
It's a pretty
beginning,
far
yeah,
drive for us, but
yeah,
yeah, it was fun to watch it grow. From the beginning.
yeah. Well, I was following in, I was standing on the shoulders of a few giants. The gym that I was with at the time, I had left Mario's, um, I guess halfway through my purple, and joined Ace's Jiu-Jitsu Club,
Okay.
and they were very supportive, mentored me to start the gym. So I was following that lead a lot. Alex, having started his gym a couple of years earlier,
Hmm.
having started Insight, I remember when he called me up. I guess we were purple belts at the time. He called me up and he's like, "Hey, a friend of mine was like, I don't remember how he phrased it, but he was pretending it wasn't him. He's like, a friend of mine was thinking about starting a gym. He's a purple belt, and I was like, that's crazy. Like, who would do that? And he's like, okay, it's me, and I'm gonna do this. And I'm like, you're insane. And like he did it, and of course he is where he is today.
Yeah.
But then so I was following. If he could do it, like that gave me the confidence that I could do it. And he was very
Yeah.
helpful in the early stages. He helped me with my logo. He helped me with my website. And then Jason Claunch was another guy that I was emulating quite a bit, because that was the model. I knew I wasn't going to ever quit my day job. That was never a thing for me, to make my gym my full time anything.
Yeah.
So I was following the Claunch model of, he had a job that kept him very busy, but he was able to part-time teach for many, many years. He still is. Um, and so I was following his example in a lot of ways. So those were like the people and the situations that kind of gave me the impetus to start, and the confidence to be able to start that business,
Hmm.
and keep it going.
Cool. Okay, let's switch it up a little bit and talk about leadership. What does it mean to you to be a leader in the gym that you attend and possibly the BJJ community in general?
I find myself still at this point, after having run a gym for 6 years and a bit, and and been a black belt for 4, I guess, and I still find myself surprised every now and then that people listen to me. um, Imposter syndrome is a huge thing for me. Like,
Hmm.
despite what I said earlier about, like, okay, there's this stuff and you can learn it and then you can be better at it, and you can achieve this proficiency just by, if you work at it, if you just go, if you attend and you pay attention, then you're going to get there. Um, at the same time, like, I've spent a dozen years doing that, and I'm still surprised when people like seek my opinion on something, or ask me about something, or want to know, like, um, and part of that is the humility thing that I was talking about earlier. Like, because I know that there are so many people out there who are so much more knowledgeable than me, so much more capable than me. Like, who am I? If you asking my opinion, is it really? It's the blind leading the blind. But at the same time, I have earned this knowledge. I have earned this understanding and this proficiency. And so I might not. I certainly don't know everything. I don't know a fraction of everything, but But I know more than some people. And so when a white belt asks a question, I don't have to give the PhD level answer, right? If a 7-year-old asks you about a math question, you're not going to start, spouting differential equations. It doesn't, like, they're not ready for it yet, right? So it's okay that you don't know, advanced math if you're talking to somebody who's still back at that stage. And so once I kind of get over that mental hurdle, I can accept the fact that, I can contribute. I have something that I can contribute, that I can answer their question, or that I can teach that class or that technique in a way that they're going to get something out of it, even if I don't know the everything about it, even if I don't know the last detail. And I'm still getting used to it. I'm still getting used to, when I travel anywhere I go, before I even book hotels or anything, I'm always making sure there's a gym, and contacting them to make sure that I can drop in or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I'll go to these places, and they, another great thing about this art is that, if somebody is a black belt, and leaving imposters aside, it's very easy to tell who an imposter is very, very quickly. Leaving that aside, if somebody's a black belt and they walk into your gym, that they have that certain level. That you could ask them, hey, like, show me how you set up a triangle. And from black belt to black belt, or even black belt to a purple, even if I ask a purple belt that question, they're going to show me something. They're going to say something. They're going to have a detail that I just didn't really think of it that way before. I didn't, I do it my way. I have my way. I've taught it 1,000 times, and I do it a certain way. And I emphasize these details and these angles and these setups and whatever. But every time I go take a class somewhere, I will see things that I'd never seen before, see them in ways that I hadn't seen them before. And so the same thing happens in reverse. I can go someplace, and a 6th degree black belt is teaching the class, and he'll even when I was a brown belt or whatever, I'd come and drop in somewhere, and they'd be like, well, hey, what do you think about this? Like, what would you like? You teach this technique for me. And I'll get that scared, like, well, what could I possibly teach that you wouldn't know? But I have to remember that all of our journeys are so different, that I'll show it this way, and maybe it's something that 6th degree just hadn't seen before, or maybe they'd seen it, but it wasn't a detail that spoke to them, that they convey to their students. And so their students are getting something from this cross-pollination that they wouldn't otherwise be getting. And by the way, since I've said cross-pollination, I want to emphasize, just like, if you're watching this and you're a lower belt, cross-pollination is hugely important. If you're at a gym and your gym doesn't like you to train elsewhere, go find another gym, right? That's not a good look. It's so important and so enriching and so educational, to get that diversity of instruction, to get to get. And I don't care what rank they are. You can, like I said, you can get something out of somebody that you outrank by two or three belts. You will get something out of it. Go train at other gyms. Go to open mats. Go to class. When you travel, make sure you're training somewhere. Some of the greatest tips that I've gotten, some of the family that I've expanded, my family has expanded everywhere that I go. So go train other places. And if you're at a gym that doesn't like that, find a different gym, because that's not a good look.
Yeah, I agree for sure. You hit the nail on the head. That's one of the reasons why I love to go train other places, is because, just like you said, someone else show a little detail, and I'm like, oh, I never thought about it like that or that way, and
it opens everything up. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And the number of things that I've brought back from other gyms, like I'll visit, actually, this one right here. I visited Maryland for to visit family a couple months ago, and went and dropped in on a class, and immediately brought back stuff to my gym. I do every time I travel, I do that. And so yeah, it's huge.
Well, we definitely get used to, like, not everyone has the same style in their gym, but you get used to how everyone rolls, and then you go roll somewhere else, and it's like, holy crap, I've forgotten about all this other stuff.
Yeah. So. Or you get caught in something. I mean, as a black belt, I get caught in something, and I'll be like, what was that? Show me that. Teach me that. What was, like, yeah.
That's great. What is the toughest time that you have faced in jiu-jitsu? Your toughest time?
I don't know. I'm probably glorifying it all in my head, but like it's all seemed pretty. I mean, ups and downs, of course, but generally pretty smooth sailing. I already talked about, I had a major medical issue that sidelined me for a little while, but and that was tough, but whatever, you come back from that kind of stuff, like it's the big picture, right? It's the long arc that we're into it for. I don't know. Maybe I'm too positive a person for this question.
Nah, you can't be too positive a person. I don't think I love it.
I think that okay, here we go. Being like Matt Minute for Matt Minute, training with Alex and watching him get better faster.
Yeah.
That's been difficult. Like I've accepted it now, but like it's just the fact that he's and at this point I have lots of good excuses. Like he did go full time with this thing. He did get into competition, which very much changes the way you roll. It definitely makes you a better grappler to be a competitor. And so like I have lots of excuses for why he's way better than me, but like that's been like a real ego check for me, because like I'm bigger and stronger than him, but like he just kicks my ass like without even trying. It's embarrassing. So I don't know. Maybe that's an answer.
I like it. That's a good answer. So from when you started till up until recently, who have been some of your BJJ mentors?
Okay, yeah. So I talked about this a little bit earlier. Alex has obviously been a huge mentor. Everything that I've done as far as gym founding and ownership and running, like everything that I've done, he's done a little bit earlier and a little bit better. And so I've always looked up to him as far as that that aspect of stuff. His talent and his dedication to the art. And I have to accept that I'm in a different place in my life. I'm not going to go full time with this thing. And so being in the situation that I'm in, I've not ever have been at a point where I haven't been able to look up to him and look like at him as an example. Like I said, Jason Claunch was one of the people that I looked up to as far as an example for how you can be have a full-time job and still run a gym on the side, which he's been doing that successfully for many years. And so that's been, and I don't really know that he realizes like how much of an influence that had, but like that kind of gave me the like that made me realize that it's possible to do that.
Yeah.
And so that's been a big help. Mentors. I mean, anytime that I see the little guy making a go of it, it's one thing for like, and I guess, Marcelo Garcia must have started somewhere, right? He wasn't, did he found his gym after he had like competition accolades? I don't even know, or whatever. Like, and that was just the first name that popped in my head. But like, people who aren't necessarily like kick-ass competitors or like jiu-jitsu famous people who can start programs and start gyms and become successful at it for certain values of the word successful, right?
Yeah.
Successful doesn't necessarily mean they're making a bunch of money at it.
Mm-hmm.
To me, successful means that they're making it what they wanted it to be, right?
Sure.
And that's a pretty important distinction for me, because I was never in it for the money.
Yeah.
I never cared. I pretty much wanted my hobby to break even, but if it didn't, I was willing to live with that. I certainly was never in it to make a profit. Success to me was getting people on the mats, getting people interested in the art, being able to teach them so that they learn. One of the biggest satisfactions that I get is, I got a couple of students who are now purple belts that have learned with me from zero, like from day one. They've been with me, and these guys kick ass. And obviously the majority of that is their focus, their dedication, their work, but I get to take some credit for bringing them to this art and for help, like being the sort of the shepherd of their journey. Yeah, exactly. So, and I look up to those people as well, like, to the people who you can see that spark in their eyes. After the first round of their first class sparring, they get that gleam. You can see it. And when those people take that feeling that they got and recognize, oh, this is a thing that's going to be my life now. It's going to be a big part of my life now, and commit to that. That's an admirable thing. That's something that I can look up to. Yeah. I don't know if like people would answer this question. Oh, John Danaher is I look up to, right, or things like that. Like, I'm always looking for teaching styles that I want to emulate or avoid. There are specific people, like if I'm browsing, whatever, I'm looking at videos or whatever, there are people whose styles of teaching, like, I kind of roll my eyes and I'm like, is this guy talking more? Can you just get to the technique, please?
Yeah.
And like, but for me, like, that's because, I don't really need them to talk, because what I'm trying to get out of it is something very different from what a white belt might be trying to get out of it. And all the talking might do them some good. So like, it's different strokes for different folks. But when I'm, like, I really look up to Lachlan Giles, because of, like, I don't even know, I think he's got competition accolades, and good for him. Like, that's great. It's the way he teaches that really speaks to me. The level of detail and the sort of the way that he ties everything together and the way it all makes sense, the way he structures his lessons that really, really flow into each other. So that kind of thing, I look up to and I try to emulate where I can.
Yeah.
And I try to, and other things I try to avoid. Like, I try to avoid spending a lot of my lesson just talking about stuff, and I try to show more and give more time for drilling, give more time for instruction.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I love it. Great answer. All right, Professor, what are some of your favorite submissions?
I have always loved collar chokes, and I don't know if we want to get off into the gi no gi tangent here, but I've always loved collar chokes. I don't know, I guess growing up, like, I enjoyed sort of, the martial arts movies where where they'll use these bizarre weapons or make use of something in their environment, that's like, so it's not just raw body against body, it's they're using toys. And to me, the gi is like the ultimate combat toy. I'll choke you with your gi, I'll choke you with my gi, I'll choke you with the skirt, with the with my sleeve, like whatever. So that's like, as a broad class of submissions, I really enjoy using clothes to kill people.
That's awesome. I'm the same way. I hate, right now at least, I hate no gi because I feel like I have no tools in my toolbox. Yeah,
which of course means that you should train more.
Yeah,
no gi, right?
Yep, that's where I'm at.
I have done mostly gi. I have done enough no gi to recognize that, and I'm good enough at it, right? But and this is one of the standard questions, like, if you had to pick one, gi or no gi, for the rest of your life, which would it be? And for me, it would be gi. Partly because there's that broader, there's a bigger encyclopedia of moves that you can do, right? That having the grips really opens up a lot of different techniques that you can't feasibly do with no gi. Spider guard. Yes, somebody with bigger hands than me. I've got little lady hands. Somebody with bigger hands than me might be able to grab a wrist and hold onto it and do some sort of an effective spider guard. I can't. Like, that's not the thing for me. So having the grip, having the gi grip, right, that opens up a whole panoply of different, different moves that I can
Yeah,
do. That's part of
definitely.
it. But the other part of it is that I'm old, right, and like my body is. No gi is much more of is a faster paced and more athletic pursuit. And
Hmm.
like back to the whole one of the whole reasons that I got into this is because it's something that I want to be able to do as I get older and more frail, because it's more about the technique than it is about the physical prowess. And so as I get older, I want to be able to take that slower approach, that more methodical approach, to be able to like pause for a minute in a position because I've got some friction, I've got some grips, and be able
Yep.
to think through what the next thing is, rather than you do no gi against a D1 wrestler. You better be ready to like, to put some moxie behind it.
Hmm.
Whereas in a gi, you can really kind of take a step back, slow things down. Um,
Do you have any advice for white belts?
Keep training. You will feel overwhelmed. You will be drinking from the fire hose. You will not remember for the first
Mm.
6 months. You don't expect to remember like significantly anything really. Keep training. Uh, it is more important to train regularly than to train hard or to train a lot. In other words, go to a 1 hour class 3 times a week rather than like doing 2 a days for 3 weeks and then burning out and taking 4 weeks off. Like, that's not going to serve you. Um, you will, as far as drinking from the fire hose goes, right? You will feel overwhelmed. You'll feel like there's just far too much. You're going to get your ass kicked. It's going to happen. But everything that you see, you will see again. And the next time you see it, you will have seen other things. And so not only by virtue of seeing that move again and like pseudo remembering things about it, you've also now kind of built a little bit of context into which you can slot that thing. And so it's going to make more sense the next time you see it. And that revelatory moment when you see that move again and go, oh, this
Hmm.
clicks for me now. I totally didn't understand it before, but now it's clicking for me. Like, that's a real feeling of satisfaction. That's a real
Hmm.
gem, and you're only going to get that if you keep going. Um, Advice for white belts: smarter, not harder. This goes out especially to the athletic white belts, to the white belts who are. I've got a guy who was a bodybuilder when he came to train with me, Eddie, and he came in
Okay.
and like he tried to power his way through his first class. Obviously, he got completely destroyed, and he was the one of the ones who was like really humbled by that and like, oh my god, I have to learn this. And after a few weeks, he came to me and he's like, what can I do? Like, as a white belt, what can I do to become better? And I said, Eddie, turn off the power. Uh, Stop using strength completely. Focus on the technique. Get better at the technique. You are going to get. Obviously, the strength helps him. Would help him not get his ass kicked quite as much. You're going to get your ass kicked more by doing that, but it's going to make you a better grappler. And he did exactly that. He turned off the power for a couple of years, and then after a couple of years, I went back to him and I said, "Hey, remember when we had that conversation? I'm like, you've been doing that, and you've been doing an amazing job of it. Now, I want you to turn it back on." And he's an absolute beast, right?
Yes.
Because he got
Yes.
that foundation of technique first, and then started adding the physical back into it.
Awesome.
Obviously, physical makes a difference. Anybody who does like there's this ideal of jujitsu that the little guy's always gonna win, or what, like you can win as a skill for skill. Yeah, the bigger guy, the more athletic guy is gonna win. So like if you have that physical ability, more power to you. If you have natural flexibility, if you have natural talent, physical talent, athletic talent, reflexes, really good reflexes, all of that's great. And it's going to be what gives you the edge once you've established the baseline of skill.
Yep.
So, that try to train without that stuff first and add it back in later, because it's actually going to get in your way, because it's going to give you that edge that's not going to require you to develop the skill as well. And so taking that out of the equation, you're actually going to get better. And then when you can selectively turn it back on, that's going to be what kind of blows things up. That's when it's going to be what's going to give you the edge over the next guy.
Yeah, that's great advice for white belts for sure. Well, before we bring this to a close, is there anything that you would like to add? Just any thoughts that you would like to put out there to the Jiu-Jitsu universe?
Probably nothing that I haven't already said. Train consistently, train smart. You're going to get injured. It's a very physical sport. You're going to get injured. Don't let that stop you. Listen to your doctors, but only so far, because they're always going to give you a longer. I shouldn't say this at all. I'm going to get my ass sued. They're always going to tell you that you should stop training, that you should never do it again. Whatever. Like they're trying to cover their own asses. They're trying not to get themselves sued for saying something that that ends you in the hospital or whatever. But as far as physical activities go, you got to do something. And personally, like I feel like jiu-jitsu is yes, you're going to get injured, but the kinds of injuries that you're going to suffer tend to not be as devastating as if you were playing basketball or football or whatever. Like if you blow an ACL, which happens to people in jiu-jitsu, but not nearly like it happens to people, getting their knees tackled in football, right? So, take your lumps as they come, and get back to the mats and keep training. You can do this hopefully you can do this for your whole life.
Yep.
We know 70-year-olds who are still training. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Make it a life and a lifestyle.
Yeah, we've had a couple of way older people in their training, and I'm just like, that is amazing. That might be one of my mentor type. I look at that and I'm like, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. As a 38-year-old, so
yeah,
definitely. Well, Professor, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and I really appreciate you taking the time, away from your family and out of your weekend to do this.
It's been my pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
If you enjoyed this interview, let me know in the comment section. Like and subscribe for more quality content.